Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started because this is a lot of information. And I'm going to try, since I know all of you all, I'm going to try to stop at any place where I particularly know that you might be and go over it. Again, please feel free to get up, and if you need something to drink or anything like that, you will not probably disrupt me. We're going to go through this. These are a lot of slides. These slides come from the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development, and that's where the Enterprise Zone program lives, is in Richmond in that office. We are the municipalities that are fortunate enough to have an Enterprise Zone. We're the administrators of the zone, but as I've told many of you before, I don't control most anything that goes on with it. The General Assembly appropriates the dollars for it, and they make all the rules. And so one of the things I think I've told a lot of you is that the application for this, for the Real Property Improvement Grant and the Job Creation Grant, is usually not even available until late in the fourth quarter of the year that you're going to apply for. So when people finish a project in March or July or whatever, and they go, okay, I want to get ready, there's not a lot they can do because they have to wait. Now, we haven't had a lot of changes, so you probably could take the last year's manual and prepare yourself that way. You'll have an idea after you look at this tonight of how it works, but they really don't release the applications or the manual for that given calendar year, and this is a calendar year program, until late in the fourth quarter. I think it was in December this year when they, if then, they might have done it in January. You have until April 1st of 2018 to apply for either one. And what you're going to want is, if it is the Real Property Improvement Grant, you're going to apply for the calendar year in which you received a certificate of occupancy or a finalized permit, okay? So if you don't get, if you missed it and whatever happened and you didn't get it until 2018, you'll be able to apply for that year. It's just they have to see that certificate of occupancy in the year that you're going to apply. So what we're going to do in here tonight, it's a lot, but you all have our numbers, so just take in what you can. Yeah, we'll send the slides out, but if there's anything, I'd just like for you all to get the gist of it, because this is not a one-hit wonder program. This program, if you were to get the maximum amount you're allowed in the program, every 5 years you can apply again. So if you're somewhere, you can make your plans when it comes to building or, hiring people or whatever. You can just keep in the back of your mind that you can apply. If you don't get that, I'll reiterate this again, but if you don't get the full amount that the state allows, if you hit that threshold again within 5 years, you can apply for the rest of it. And if you have a CPA that's done this before, this is the first year I'm operating solo here. Normally, I do have some fabulous CPAs in town that do an incredible job with them. One in particular, Ryan McIntyre with Brown Edwards, who has done this work. He's much more knowledgeable than I, because he fills out the applications and he interfaces with Department of Housing and Community Development, and they go back and forth, figuring. He has actually helped them write rules before. So when you get a really great accountant, you're able to, that works with Dhcd, not that all your accountants aren't great, but if they've worked on this program before. The other thing you want to do is, if you're able to think about it ahead of time, is when you get a contractor or somebody that's working with you, in order to save money with your CPA, if you can get them to keep your invoices, in a certain way, you'll see the application, how they keep them. It's not complicated, but the CPA is critical to this whole process, because they are the verification. Just like the city is the verification that the work's been done to code and has been completed, the CPA verifies for them that all these invoices that you're turning in, and if you bring them, if you're a builder or somebody, in most of the time now you get just a big list of the job and how it all went, and you can pull that out. That's just going to save you money on your application. So we're going to go over some local updates in our office, some other incentive programs that are out there and available to you all, just to kind of put it in your head. We've had some changes in a couple of them, and we want to bring those to your attention. We're going to go over just a program overview, and then the real property improvement and the job creation grant. And I'm just going to hit the highlights on that, because when you start to look at the job creation grant and then the CPA attestation side of things, these are all the things your CPA has to do to attest that these, and I mean, it is very complicated. But you'll just say, I'm writing you a check and you're doing this, right? But those of you that like that sort of thing, you might say, well, I can do all of this, and then I'll just hand it to them and they can verify it and sign it. But that's part of all of that. And then you know, just how you submit the grant, it's done online. I don't even think you have to turn in a hard copy anymore of the things. Okay, so Enterprise Zone, we tried to make this easy for you all. If you're ever looking for property, or you're ever wanting to know if a location that you have is in the Enterprise Zone, you can go on Map Viewer at Lynchburg, VA, and it's Enterprise Zones. And so you can see it's an area. So, you know, you want to find out if that exact address is in there, okay? And if you, which none of you are, but if you're on the cusp of the Enterprise Zone, like if you're right outside it or something, I'm only allowed to have 7% of the city's total acreage in an Enterprise Zone per the law. So I cannot have it everywhere. I can only have 7%. So I've tried to get as much of my commercial and industrial areas as possible. Residential cannot take advantage of these programs. No residential can take advantage. So I've tried to pull the residential out. We work with our GIS, our department at the city. They are unbelievable. They are actually just partners. They know this as well as we do, and we go in every year and look at, is there anything that we can pull out? Because both of these zones are mature, meaning we've worked with them for a long time. You know, if we take anything out, we have to have a public hearing, and I mean, it's a lot of work to adjust the boundaries. However, if you are anywhere near a boundary or you're looking at a location there, just make sure you let us know, because if we're doing an amendment to the boundaries, if we're requesting that from Richmond, if we have the acreage, we'll add it in there. I'm pretty good about hawking things as I'm running or driving or doing whatever around to say, if I see some activity, you know, somewhere like something getting redeveloped, or we would love to see it get redeveloped, it's a really nice thing to have the Enterprise Zone as something that could help you sell the building, or if you bought the building, help you redevelop it. So you can see the activity in the zone. Our GIS has shown, you know, how many applications have been done, how much money's been awarded. They've done a great job with all that. So now, we have an unbelievable real estate rehabilitation program at the city. If the building that you're in is a commercial building and it is at least 25 years old and you're going to do some major renovations to it, you're going to want to call the city assessor's office, because we have a redevelopment program that will allow you, the city assessor's office comes out, looks at the property before you do the work to it, and then when you finish, the new reassessed amount, you are forgiven that amount for 10 years. That's awesome. So look at the age of your building. If it's not there yet, kind of put it on your calendar when it is. And if you do any renovations, this is one of the Enterprise Zone doesn't care when you start. They only care when you finish. Real estate rehab cares when you start, because they need to have looked at that building and seen what the assessment was on the building before you start. City Council just approved taking the commercial side and upping that to 10 years. It was 5. So that's awesome. And, you know, it's got to be 65 years old. residential has to be 50, then multifamily is, any kind of apartment building, that is 8 years. That was 15, it's gone to 8, but it has to be 5 units or more, because we consider multifamily like an apartment commercial, some sort of, of commercial. So then we've got, finally, after years, an infill policy. And what that means is we have very specific areas, and that's because the state of Virginia is a Dillon rule state, which means the state has to grant permission to the locality to do just about anything. So infill means building in, areas that are already developed. Like if you were to go downtown, for most of y'all, if in between the free clinic and the other little building over there, there's a hole there. The apartments that just went up on Court Street, there was an old industrial building back behind that, and they just built onto it. So that's infill. Infill is when you're coming into an urban area and you're trying to put new structures up in there in a very tight, that's very challenging. And it's also, you get nothing in the past. Like all these other old buildings get state, federal tax credits, all these other things, but there wasn't any, tax relief. So we now have an infill policy. It is very strict on where the coverage is for it. So please, if anybody's thinking about, another structure within, the downtown area, whatever, or if you're just thinking about another structure, just call our office, because we actually are going to probably next year, send some of our folks to the General Assembly or work with our legislators to try to get the area that it's in broadened. Because infill, like when you're in an old city like we are, a lot of the commercial or industrial buildings, some of them, they're not going to be able to be reused for their previous use. They're going to have to be totally repurposed. And for many people, if they come in to do a construction project like that, they might have environmental issues. They might have all kinds of things that make them take that building down to the ground in order to rebuild on it. And when they do that, they don't have any, benefits for doing that. And if you can imagine some of the places I just mentioned, like if you even think about down on the riverfront, where the asphalt part is right across from Riverfront Park? Can you imagine backing something up against that ledge right there, putting something up in there and the stormwater and all that? It's just very challenging. So this is our first attempt to try to help folks that come in to do that. So just brand new, remember that. We have a revolving loan fund at the city. The Economic Development Authority, which is the incentive arm of the city, 7 people just like you all that are appointed by council, that are part of, they took money from a loan that was paid off to them and put it in this revolving loan fund. And we started this when the recession happened, when banks had customers they could loan to on Monday, and then by Tuesday they couldn't. This is just to stand somebody upright, and almost all of our loans have been made from a referral from the bank, meaning it's gap financing, like something they're not comfortable with, we step in and fill that role there. So we have a revolving loan fund. It goes up to $250,000. Still is, we don't want to lose money, so we're kind of tight on how we do that. And we've had the program for, I can't remember how many years now, 6 or 7 years now, but I'm proud to say that all of our people pay right on time, and it's awesome. We probably have about 5 or 6 buildings or people that you would be very familiar with that are part of that. Local Enterprise Zone Redevelopment Program. That is a program that the Dhcd asked me, we had local incentives attached to the Enterprise Zone. Lynchburg's been fortunate enough to have an Enterprise Zone for 40 years. So we were the second Enterprise Zone in the state of Virginia. Ours downtown and in that area. Zone 46 was, as you might think, the 46th zone. But we've had that since like 1995. So we've had our zones for quite a long time. There were incentives over the years attached to those. Dhcd didn't want them attached. So this program I created that just kind of stand on its own. Now, in order to be eligible for it, you have to be in the enterprise zone, but that's all. You're not connected. This is a separate program. And so, there are several of you in here that have taken advantage of that. So that is another program that you have to fill out the application within 30 days of pulling the permit. If by some reason you don't have to have a permit, within 30 days of the receipts that you're going to bring me, you have to have filled out that application. Application is very short, on purpose. What happens with the application is it makes you eligible for the pool of money that's there. I have X amount of money, hopefully, every fiscal year, which for me ends in June 30, and it is the first finished. So what happens is I don't encumber funds just because you submitted an application. And this is only for redevelopment, and it has an age requirement on it too, meaning the building has to be X amount of years old in order for this to work. It has to be 20% commercial. So if it's an all residential kind of thing, it doesn't qualify. And when we get to the end when you're finished, you need to let us know as quickly as possible, because we go through that money with each project as it finishes. And so, it's one of those things where it's really designed that all kinds of businesses can take advantage of it. It doesn't have a threshold. So just to give you an example, I've had buildings on Oakley Avenue before that just put a fresh coat of paint on the building. It makes a tremendous difference in a neighborhood or anywhere. It makes everything look better. They spent $3,000. We give them a third back of what they can produce the receipts for, up to $25,000. So when they finish, they come and tell us, and we issue the check. Now, we ask you to do a report for us to tell us about the project. We ask you to take pictures. We're doing all that because we want to be able to show City Council what a difference these projects make. So that's why we ask you for all of that. We ask you for testimonials and everything because we have to defend that money every single year. But I will say that what you all have invested back into your properties has far exceeded the money that we had in there. This is available one time per fiscal year. So you can apply for it every year if you do a project. But just know that it is it is getting more competitive all the time in terms of, because it is not difficult to get it, and it's also there so that smaller businesses are able to take advantage of it. If you have any questions on any of that, I don't expect y'all to remember all of this. Our website is available and it's easy to navigate, but all of you could contact Anna or Jason and I. This is Jason. Raise your hand. This is Anna. We actually have Melissa, and there's a whole cadre of us down there. But at any time that you need to know anything, and I know that when I come and see some of you all, it is like, what is she talking about? But if you just remember to call one of us when you're getting ready to do something, 9 times out of 10, if you can tell us what your capital investment is and whether it's real property or machinery and tools or equipment of any kind, furniture, fixtures, if you can tell us if there are any jobs involved, our job is to go out from there and tell you what things are available. All these things are available standalone. So let's say you're a 25-year-old building. You're getting ready to do a major renovation there. You can go downstairs and get the real estate rehab with the city assessor's office. You can come upstairs and fill out my local redevelopment grant and get that in within 30 days. You can then, when you finish, come in and get the real property improvement grant from the Virginia Enterprise Zone. And if the project is much bigger than that, meaning you got a lot going on like these folks do, or like First National, you can we look at the project on a bigger level than that, and we will go out to the state if there's anything that's available other than the enterprise zone that's available from them. So we will help you navigate all of that process. But all those things, that's another reason why you see so much activity in downtown, is these developers come from all over, but they come to places based on the incentives that are there. So for a really old building, you're looking at state, federal, the real estate rehab, the enterprise zone, if they have any commercial component to, all those things add up to really help somebody get a project off the ground. So there are, I don't know how many enterprise zones there are right now. One of them can look it up and find out for me. But there were 58 enterprise zones in the Commonwealth in 2015. They are charged with, per legislation, to have 30 by 2020. Reason being, they want to make sure that when you apply for it, that you're getting as close to dollar for dollar as you can. For any of you that have already applied for it, you know that they prorate it. They will prorate it based on how many applications come in, and they prorate it based on, they give the job creation grant, press, it sets, is the lead, and then they do the real property improvement grant. But what that means is both of our zones are safe. The downtown zone is safe until 2024, and my 46 just got renewed, so that's good for a good long time there. So our zones are in place and there, for a long time, but what they're doing is weeding out the zones as they go. So they have a mandate that by 2020 they'll only have 30 zones, which bears well for our people that want to be part of this. So there's a real property improvement grant and a job creation grant, and they operate independently. So you can apply for one or the other, or however you want to do that. You can imagine it's a state program, so if you have locations across the state, they're going to look at everything. They're going to look at all your locations and look for net new employment growth. That's how they look at that. Okay? So their calendar year, all my stuff's fiscal year, so it will be June 30 is how some of our stuff rolls, but this is calendar year. And all of our things are usually done on the back end, meaning you've made the investment, we verify it, and then the money is paid out. Because we don't want to be news at 6 for paying out the money, and we won't say any more about that. So grant applications are due, are due on April 1st. In the year after. So y'all, anybody that closed, I had a list in there. I try to pull a list on 12/31 to see how many people have gotten a finalized permit, so I can just kind of wave at you and say you might be eligible. You might want to, get with your CPA and figure it out. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, maybe there are 2 in there like that. That's amazing. Oh, it's April 2nd. Well then. Okay. All right. So, real property improvement grant. Expansion, rehabilitation, or new construction. And if you see any odd-looking buildings around town where they have like Belvac or some of these places like that, where they have a big building there and they were able to make a long covered walkway into another building there. They kept that all together because that's a big expansion from an enterprise zone perspective. Because if they had a separate building, their threshold for the grant would have been $500,000. New construction is $500,000 you have to spend, and then anything over that you can have counted. Rehabilitation or expansion of an existing structure is $100,000. You don't get to count the 100, you don't get to count the 500, but after that, then 20% of those eligible expenses are allowed. Okay. Commercial, industrial, or mixed use, and it has to be 30% of the mixed use has to be commercial. A facility They have rules about a facility. They have deemed, I think the first ruling they did on a facility might have been, every now and then you have somebody come and ask you a question about their application, and then the next year you see a new rule written and you go, oh, there's so-and-so or there's so-and-so. So a facility would be something like the plaza. They've got all those businesses in there, but they don't operate, they do, independently, but they look at all of that as a facility. So they have to decide, if somebody does some major renovations there, they just they get one, application for that. And they may have to decide which one of us is going to get it, for this year. And the owner of the building, of the parcel of the building, must sign off. If you're a tenant, then you will get, you need to get the owner of the building to allow you, but tenants can apply for it too, as long as the owner allows them to do that. And the same thing goes with my local redevelopment grant. If you're a tenant, you're going to need to get the owner of the building to sign off that it's okay for you to, you're doing the improvements and for you to get the money on that. Okay. Qualified zone investor, that is, going to be who owns the building. So like I said before, if you got multiple owners or all that, you have to work that out with your CPA in terms of how any of that's going to work. The way I just like to simplify everything. I like to know what the thresholds are. I like to know when I need to apply. I like to know if I didn't reach if I didn't get the full, like the maximum you can get for an expansion or rehabilitation for under $5 million is $100,000. Okay, let's say y'all all applied, and because of proration, you only got 60. If you do another project that goes over the $100,000 threshold within 5 years, you can go back and apply again. So that's tucked in the back of your mind, or you go, Margette, didn't you tell me something? And I'll tell you again. Okay, so here we are, $100,000, $500,000. This is the type of expenses that are covered. You can actually go in, I don't know, it's probably got a copy of the application on here, but you can really go in there and look at what counts and what doesn't, and just organize your expenses. And plus, since you can only get up to that, $100,000 threshold, once you get, past a lot of that, you make a decision of how much more of your expenses you want to include. Because, you get to 600 or something, you've already maxed out on the 100. These are the things that are not qualified. So once again, the application is not very long. That's online. And you can look down there and it'll give you, it's a one-page sheet in the manual or on the application. You can see, what you can, what you're able to deduct or put in as an eligible expense. So what they do is 20% of eligible expenses. That's the calculation up to the threshold. And so for over a $5 million project, it's $200,000. So the maximum amount under $5 million, $100,000, over $5 million, $200,000, and if you have like a 5-year plan, and you know that you might go over that, you may just want to note on your application or have your CPA note on there that you're phasing this. Like there will be more coming on that, so they can look at it collectively. So this is the math. Here we go. That's very exciting. So once again, I was saying, how much of the expenses and everything are you going to put together? That sweet spot there is where if you've got a lot of expenditures over that, as to whether you want your CPA to calculate all that, because once it hits the top, So it's when it's placed in service. So that's going to mean your certificate of occupancy or your finalized permit. and they're done online. Oh, that you do have to have a hard copy. Okay, must be postmarked. And we know this in our office because I have people lined up at the door for me to sign it. I have to sign, my only job besides this, and explaining to you, and being very grateful to be able to do that, is to sign and verify that you are in the zone. So I signed the application verifying to Dhcd. There are three important people there. There's a CPA who verifies for them that those expenses, are what really occurred. There's the city building official saying that your work is up to code, and there's me saying that you are actually in the zone. So you've got to fill out the electronic copy and send that, and then you mail a hard copy to them. And we just always try to tell the CPAs or anybody that's doing it, please call first, because we have other things that we might be doing. And we try to be very, I have actually gotten in the car and driven to places to sign the thing for them if that's necessary. But I don't like it when people are going, well, I came up there, and I go, will you have a smoke signal or anything that you might be able to employ there? So you could just let me know what you're doing, because I'm very helpful, but there's a certain time. So it's organized in 7 parts. And that's very overwhelming, isn't it? But it's really not that bad. It is. It really is. We'll go fast, but here's, once again, like I said before, for your CPA or folks in there, you're just going to want to keep these things categorized in the area they are. And if your builder or anybody knows anything about that, they can really help you out with that and organize that in when they give you the sheet on it. Well, and truly, y'all, if by now, if I were them, I'd be memorizing this, and when I got ready to do your bid, I'd say, I've done enterprise zone work before, and I can help you off this, because it can save you some dollars when you start to get, there at the end. Plus, it just puts you so much further, ahead of the game there. And it allows somebody that may not have known anything about this, like, I have a lot of doctor's offices, Angie, as you might imagine, and their administrator there doesn't know, they're not on the mailing list. They don't know anything about this, and I've had to call them and say, I am not a crazy person, but your practice is on my list here, and I know that you're not going to understand anything I'm saying, but if you can scramble together all these invoices, there's money laying out there. And, they're just going, who is, I've had to get, and then I go and try to find somebody that knows them and say, she's really not a stalker. She is trying to help you, right? And then we hug after that's all over with. But before then, I'm relatively scary. Because I'm like, I'm pretty intense when I get in there, and I'm talking like the FedEx guy with a southern accent, and I'm going, blah, 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 and they're just going, what in the world? Yeah, this is very small print. But it really is just, when was it placed in service? What year are you trying to go for? And the grant calculation. What's the dollar amount that that the total is, and then how much of that is applicable? It kind of fills in. Your CPA can do that. It's and then see at the bottom there, must indicate the amount of any previous awards. But the thing I would say to you is just that in the back of your mind is that if you don't, for some reason you don't get the full amount, just tuck back in there that if you do any other improvements that reach that threshold, you can go back for that, if it makes sense, if it's worth it to pay the accountant or anything. And then after 5 years, you can start all over again. Okay, supplemental forms, investments made to a mixed-use building, they're going to want to be verified that 30% of it's commercial. The zone investor is a tenant. They're going to need a consent form, as I already told you. And when you own a space within one of these facilities. These are just oddball kinds of things there. So I just said all that. And this is just all where owners and tenants do not coordinate, that's a problem. So.
What about when it's an owner occupied, but the building is actually owned by different names, but it's still the same?
Yes, I would say that as long as an authorized, can sign for the LLC or whatever it is that owns the building, or they can sign for that then, and they sign off saying that if whatever that legal structure is, the tenant, as long as you have the other part is that when you get in those situations, Dhcd is incredibly helpful to walk you through that. I'll also tell you that when you submit your application in April, they will go through it, and if there are any problems with it, they will give you the opportunity to correct it. The only time when it's not is when they are looking on there and they clearly can see that you didn't have an inspection, or there's some problem with how much commercial space there is or something like that. That is when they may say to you, we can't accept this, or we'll wait, and when you gather some more expenses, here for this particular project, you can resubmit it. So, placed in service documentation, y'all don't have to worry about that. Bottom line is you want a CO or a finalized permit. If it doesn't require that, I've only had this happen once. Where somebody, came in and they go, well, I did thousands of dollars worth of painting. And I went, well, you needed to call somebody first, because I'm not going to ask my building officials to write a letter that the work has been done after the fact. You need to, if you have any questions, you can call us, or you can speak with the building official. And they really do, I have to tell you, our guys in the city at Community Development, they work really, really hard to try to get these permits issued and things done when they know that you all have, when there are incentive or grant things associated with that. Okay. So, these are all very different things. Differences in address entered from one year to another. You just want to make sure you're not up late and putting the wrong address on that application. Properties identified as buildings instead of a facility. They're just trying to cover every base here. Vague or conditional. You can see that every year we get about 6 more slides based on what somebody has done that they couldn't read or do something with. So they get somebody just put site work. They want you to break it down as to what it included. They also monitor this. As you might imagine, as all of us, we don't have a tremendous amount of resources. But they can at any time come and audit to see that what you told them you were doing, you did. And they want you to keep it for a minimum of 3 years. This is your brain on cookies. It really isn't, I just think the key things are always 5 years, got to keep it's calendar year. Nobody cares when you start, just care when you finish. And, getting a CPA in line that can, and truly, if your CPA hasn't done it before, it might behoove them to work with one that has. I've seen plenty of CPAs work with each other. That one might be a great CPA for your practice, but if somebody knows how to do the enterprise zone, they can whip through it like Ryan. There's nobody better than Ryan. He's probably helped write half the rules that they have there. By just bringing things to their attention. And he also can, talk about how you should structure it so that you get the maximum amount. But once again, when you have a really big project, you're not going to have to worry about that anyway because of the ceilings. Okay, job creation grants. Now, these get very complicated only because of how they have you track this, but the bottom line is this. They are looking for jobs that are pay like 175% or 200% of minimum wage with benefits. You are eligible for these when you create the 5th job. Okay? If you have multiple locations like you all did, they're going to look at all of your locations, and there has to be a net new created, from all of your locations. So if you had things all over the place, but you opened a new office in Lynchburg, as long as you hadn't laid anybody off at any of the other ones, once you get to that 5th employee, that's when you can apply. So you also have a look back year. We'll keep rolling through these. Yeah. So job creation grant, not eligible, are local, state, federal agencies. They're not eligible for the real property improvement grant either. Okay? But nonprofits recently, in the last 5 years, have become eligible for the real property improvement grant, but they are not eligible for job creation. And so are some other types of industries. Retail. So they do have some restrictions. They're looking for, as you saw in the beginning, well-paid, good jobs. But they also will look at if your whole workforce doesn't meet the criteria, the part of your workforce that does is eligible. Okay? And it's the same thing. You're going to apply for the job creation grant every year for 5 years. Like when you have a project that creates a number of jobs, you're going to be able to apply with Dhcd for this amount per employee for 5 years. And then you can start all over again. Okay? And so anybody you hire, in that you set a base year, okay? And you want that base year to be when you have the fewest employees if possible. And they'll give you a year look back from when you do it. So I'm thinking y'all are ready to roll. You've got a look back year of 2016 where you would have had maybe 12, if that. And then all those other people, once you hit that 5, they all count. And so they don't care if you keep the person. No, that sounds cruel. They care if you keep the job, right? So if that job is there, even if it's filled by another person, then that is eligible. And all the jobs that you add in between there, like say in the first year you added 150, well, if you add another 100 or another 5, as the years go on, whatever those numbers are, that you can add at any time. Once your project is rolling, you can add at any time.
It has to be a filled job, not just an opening.
Yeah, it has to be a field. The person has to be in it. And that's where you'll see up here it'll get really complicated and my voice will trail off. So net new to Virginia, like I told you. So you look down through all of your locations and make sure that you HR ends up with a net new, of all the locations. Permanent and full-time, earn at least 175% of the federal minimum wage, and offered health insurance benefits. So when this gets dicey, do you hear that? Offered. So that's when you want your CPA or, you want people involved there because there are, you could offer and the folks didn't take it, but you still get to count them. Okay, so restricted areas are personal service, and they've even given you the Nexus code there, food and beverage and retail. Okay, jobs of indefinite duration at a business firm located in an enterprise zone. You've got to report to work within the zone on a regular basis, at least once a month. Who has that job? And work a number of hours. So they've got this you'll see when we get to it in the application that it fills in and you're just keeping that, you're populating the job. So they've actually, that HUA there means a high unemployment area. I'm happy to say we are not in that category anymore. We used to be. So the wage threshold, as I said, 175% is $12.69. 200% is $1,450. So for those of you that have a large number of employees, you're going to count the ones that are over that threshold. So it's not like you go in there, it's who's eligible per this. And anybody that is paid over that amount can be put in the queue. I don't think that contracted services, and there may be some, really definitive things about what they consider contracted services. So let's get down through here and let me see if it's on there. Right. That might be a different, yeah. What do they receive from Pacific Life? I mean, are they paid by, what is it? Your people. What? Uh-huh. Right, but do you provide their health insurance? Do you pay them? You do all of that? See, that to me that would be something to look into, because that's a little different kind of contracted. Yeah, that's a lot of money. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. She skipped over the high unemployment sign. They just gave you the list of municipalities in Virginia. Yes. Uh-huh.
Right there. So where it says wage rate threshold $1,450 or TD of 800, is that the new number for this year, or was it the same?
It's just the same.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I remember filling out a form and it was somebody was 700.
Yeah, that might have been a different program. I mean, like, you all qualify for VGIP, a workforce development thing. I mean, you got a bunch of things in here, but for this one, it's either 500 or 800. Okay. For as long as I can remember, Marcus, it's been 500 or 800 based on what it was there. Okay. All right. So once you get over 100, is it 150 employees or 100? 100. If you have less than 100 employees, you don't have to have a CPA. So you don't have that added expense. Well, of course, that means you have to navigate that application by yourself, but you don't have to have a CPA. So you could fill out this grant without a CPA. They're going to be based on wage rates and the number of full months worked in a grant year. So like I said, 500 for anything 175 and 800 for the other, and it goes up to 350. Okay. Yeah. This is an example for you of just somebody had 10 full-time employees in their base year. And so you can see how the calculations work there. So you just always want to, when you're going to hire over 5 employees, you just want to be mindful that this is, because of where you're physically located, geographically specific location, this is an option there. But you want to have that look back year be as few employees, as you can. So you apply for 5 years. This is the dreaded chart. Yeah. Yeah. They all pre-load in there. But I don't think, it looks a little, daunting up here, but it's really there. Things like how many hours does somebody, are they working for you? If they're a full-time employee with you and you get that part straight, they're just going to want to see that, if you had somebody half a year, I think they do some proration there. But it's not I don't think it's as bad. It's just, you've got the fundamentals of this.
Should this be done separately from your, it should be done separately from your
It is
reservation?
separate, yeah.
So you don't have to wait.
Okay. No. So Job creation and real property improvement grant are independent. And you can apply for one, you can apply for both, you can do whatever it is that you need to do. But, there's the things to remember are, you get the, CO or finalized permit, you once that train leaves the station, you can't get it back. So you want to apply in that year at the end. Job creation grant, you're only going to want to be thinking about when did my project ramp up and what's my lowest, what's my base year. Your base year can be the year you apply in, or they'll let you look back a year. So you have that option there. All right, so here we go. The following positions should not be included. Positions that are not permanent. They say contract or seasonal. I would say there's probably a place in there that addresses what you're talking about, meaning contract has a definition, and to me, if you're providing everything there except the hiring, these people may be hiring these folks, and you have an annual contract with them, but you're doing everything else, I would say that would have a good chance of being able to be part of it. Positions that aren't full-time. Food, beverage, retail, and personal service, I would say that might be hairdressers or a nail salon. I mean, this whole thing was created back in the day to create jobs, and it really wanted to create jobs from a neighborhood perspective. That's why it was geographically specific. As it's morphed over the years, that's why residential parcels were included, because it used to be you had to calculate you had to tell them where the person lived in conjunction to your business. Okay, you divide the employee's annual salary by 1,820 hours. Include shift premiums and commissions, but don't include bonuses and overtime. But I would imagine that you get in there and get rolling, it all populates in there. Oh boy, printing instructions. So printing these little worksheets. Once again, hard copy, and I would probably say that if you look at it and you do a lot of that kind of work, I don't know that I necessarily would take on the job creation grant without some assistance, just to work yourself through that. But I will tell you, if you do anything wrong, they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. They're going to call you back and they're going to ask you and they'll walk you through it. And they are very nice at Dhcd in helping people and walking them through it. But the sooner you can ask them your questions, or there's a whole manual on the job creation grant as well as the real property improvement grant, they get ramped up when they start to get these applications, ready to go. And you don't want to leave it till the last minute. You want to make sure that you're getting everything in there. So you don't have to have an attestation from your CPA. If your the base year employment of 100 or fewer positions and creates 25 or fewer eligible positions. It's very nice. This one's only 4 parts, but those drive you more nuts than the 7. So you put on there whether you're high in the employment area, you are not. Signature of the zone administrator, that would be me. It really, other than that spreadsheet that's in the back of it, when I get these, this is the sheet that I get, and it really just breaks it down and says, how many employees did you have on your base year? How many have you added? And less, 5 or less 4, and then what's that total number on there? And of course that changed. Anna and I were doing calculations this afternoon on what had gone on, and all the businesses that submit those job creation grants every single year, I just subtract what they had in 2015 from what they had in 2016. That gives me the number of employees that they added for that year for my reporting purposes. And all they're doing with that big spreadsheet is making sure that you've met the number of hours that make somebody permanent, that they have health insurance. So I don't think it is as daunting, like I said, as was up there. all job creation grants are monitored in the first year. I mean, they're certainly looking to make sure, like everything, that these jobs are created and in place and full-time. And from a record-keeping standpoint, they want you to keep these, they want you to have your records on file for at least 5 years. And that, if they came and found that you didn't do what they had requested, or that you were gaming the system in some kind of way, that is what we call a clawback. So whatever grant money that they had given you, they would ask you for a part of that back. So any, I'm going to say basic questions about the job creation grant, because the contract thing, that's just my gut feel about that, John, is that if you're paying the people and providing benefits and doing all that, I would think that goes to a different level on a contract side. Yeah, and don't worry, we'll ask too. We'll ask them. Okay, agreed upon procedures. This is really your CPA, and these are the things that that are required. And agreed upon procedures, meaning that CPA is agreeing to how these are done, and when they sign their name on the dotted line, they are attesting to the fact that what you've given them is true and real. So that's another reason why the Department of Housing and Community Development can oversee projects like that, because they've got all kind of backstops, as I have said previously. Building inspector, me, and the CPA. So this is, if I had CPAs sitting in the room, for them to understand, what's required of them when they sign off on this. So the application, qualified investments, service documentation, they're just making sure all those things are in there. Square footage for mixed use, as I said before, owner space in the building, and tenant. So any of those things that we already talked about, those are things that are a little off. You're always going to have the owner sign off. If you're applying for a certain amount of space in there, is it a mixed-use building? If it's less than 30%, it doesn't qualify. And do you have a certificate of occupancy or finalized permit? And are your invoices straight? So the W-9, I'm just going to, we will send all of this to you, but you have to have a CPA and a real property improvement grant, so they're going to know all this. We're happy to send this to them. If you have a CPA that wasn't able to be here or any of that, but I promise you, when you go through one of these once and a lot of times when we get to a place where we don't know, we're happy to call for you and ask, and hypothetically, we don't say Pacific Life or we don't tell anybody who asked, we just ask the question. We ask the question to make sure that you can position yourself in terms of your company in the best possible way to take advantage of the grant. Okay. Yeah. Yes, I have. Yeah, so prohibited positions, you're not putting any of those in there. They're permanent full-time. I mean, this just kind of tells you right there. If they're making somebody attest to it, that's what you need to pay attention to. Required documentation, full-time, they have health insurance benefits. And then the grant, which ones are the grant eligible position? They have to be full-time, have health insurance.
So I assume for the job grant, it's at the end of the calendar year, so it's net employees for that year across the...
Yeah.
Okay.
You establish your base year. They're always going to ask you what were the number of employees you had on your base year. And then as you go down from there, they will ask you how many were on the payroll at the end, of that year as full-time with health insurance benefits, and how many were on the payroll at 175% of federal minimum wage, and how many were on at 200. So they break all of that out, and then they come up with that net amount at the bottom. Okay. Don't be late. Don't be late. Okay, so the General Assembly has allocated $12.5 million. If you ever have any dealings with your legislators, these two programs are some of the best programs that are out there. And they're buried in so much stuff. It's amazing to me when I talk to the legislators that how unaware they are of how important these programs are. So I looked in 2016 as Anna and I were doing calculations and Jason today. And so for 2016, the amount invested in the city in the enterprise zone where people applied for this was over $15 million. And over almost $835,000 came back into the businesses from this program. So when you think about working with older buildings, even if it's a manufacturing facility or like First National has this absolutely gorgeous new bank over off Oddfellows Road. I mean, they've put all that up. It looks amazing, but they're able to get something to help, reduce that cost to bring that online. And the same thing goes with job creation. And this kind of stands alone, so there are other programs, out there, and we know that incentives don't drive how you all make business decisions, but they certainly help. And they certainly help when people are trying to decide, what are we going to do? And like if you have an older building out there, it's challenging to update that. And we don't have local incentives that are, that are just there all the time. So when you layer those together, it makes us, I think, very competitive. So in 15, it was at 67%, and in 16, it was at 73%. So when they divvied it up, now job creation grants always get preference. So they fund those, as you might imagine, it's very political. They fund those first. And so job creation, I think you and I looked at it today, was at 99%, that they made sure that those got funded. So, but also remember that each year as we come along, we're reducing the number of zones out there. So they will get to, by 2020, you'll only have 30 zones. So, like I told you, January they opened the applications up. April 2nd is when you do it. By May 15th, they've let you know of any deficiencies. June 1st is the deadline for getting those resolved. They notify you of qualifications, and in July you have a check. Yeah. They had some kind of thing where they were trying to make it easier. You know how that goes. And you were all supposed to register and do something, and it was a nightmare. And so you don't have to do anything but go out there, find the application, get it filled out. I sign it. A CPA signs it. You take your building permit or your certificate of occupancy, rock on. Always making sure you're in the zone. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and you're going to want to, if you're close, you're going to want to get, make sure you FedEx it or do something where they can get it postmarked there by April 2nd. Then, they want you to submit it early. Yeah. Like you got a lot of extra time on your hands. These are all the folks on the front line there, but we're your folks. So if you need anything, sometimes if we get into like the contractor thing, that's very interesting. And not only that, but lots and lots of businesses that I'm dealing with are dealing with contractors. So for me to just find out how they treat that, because yours seems like a very specific, kind of case there. Some people are just bringing folks in for X amount of time, but they're employed by somebody else. I think that would be a problem. But what you described, we'll call and find out what that is. Oh boy, that's so exciting. Yeah, and hopefully all of y'all know you can contact us at any time to find out about any of this. I think where it gets confusing is when I'm talking to you about all these different programs there. I don't expect you to remember all that. I just expect you to know if you've got a building permit that you're getting ready to pull somewhere, you might go, I might want to call Margette or Ann or Jason. And just let them know what it is that I'm doing. And, you know, as much as other people, I want other people to remind you and say, oh, yeah, what about the enterprise zone? When they think they know everything about it, if they're not, Ryan, no thank you. You know, call somebody here because rules change. Just like I have had the thresholds on the enterprise zone real property improvement grant get changed on me in December, where a person, you know, read all the rules, did everything they were supposed to do, and the threshold got bumped up. And they had planned their whole project. You know, but that's part of the reason I have the local redevelopment grant, because I said I'm never going to look in somebody's eyes again who's planned this whole thing. They did the work themselves. They did everything right. And Dhcd changed the rule, the General Assembly changed the rules on it at the end of the calendar year, which they can do. Up until 12/31, they can change anything they want to. But that's no way for a person who's trying to plan a project. So those are the kinds of things where it doesn't change. I will tell you over the last, 5-6 years, they have made no, changes to actually how it operates. The other thing is for people to know that as soon as 5 years is up, you can start all over again. Or on the real property improvement grant, if you didn't get your full amount for any reason and you hit that threshold again of $100,000, you can go back in and apply. So those are the things to me that are just good to remember. It is a tool in the toolkit to help you all with rehab, expansion, anything you're doing there, and the same thing goes with job creation. And there's usually other programs. So if this works, this is usually the one that gets the most press. People know they're in the enterprise zone. So we have a conference for creative small businesses on February the 24th. It's really very cool. And then the State of the City address, which I know y'all can wait to go to, but it's really going to be very, very cool, is at City Hall on February 26th. And we would love to see all of you there. But get there early, right, Steve? Because there's overflow room for when it goes. But I think they've got some cool stuff planned. They always have food from the restaurant. A lot of restaurants in town in the Galleria get there. And so I think they have some cool things planned. And they always do the mayor and the vice mayor's awards. And that's always wonderful because you find out these people that you probably go to church with or sit beside somewhere and you had no idea they were doing all this great stuff, volunteering. Okay. Do y'all have any other questions? That was pretty good. It was rolled right through that bad boy. Any questions on anything to do with our office? You got it? I'll make sure you have do we have any more of the real estate rehab? Fantastic. Okay. This is our annual report here. Just know that we have a newsletter. Everybody has a newsletter. We do a few events a year, not a whole lot, because we don't want to compete with the chamber or anybody like that. We want you to know that when we're doing something, we're serious, and we don't want to take your time if we can't add value at the end of the day. But a lot of times we will, reach out to you also. If there's anybody in your organization that you would like to be, a part of what we're doing, just, holler at one of us and let us know. We have everything that we do in our office is done normally from feedback from you all. So a lot of the things over the years that I've been here have directly been from sitting in a room where you explained a challenge to me or you had a great idea and we took it back, and because I happen to think local government is where you can really make a difference, your voice is powerful. And so a lot of times if there are things that need to get done, I'm going to need you to help me spread that word. So like I said, we try not to bombard you with a lot of things, but we do really, I've gotten to the point where everybody is so incredibly busy And I'm talking about all these different things. I find that when you walk through a project, if you have a project and you walk through it with us, then it starts to, I can talk about all this, but until it's real to you and you're using it for something. But the other part of it is, don't do any of that alone. Let one of us know, and we will take all those different pieces and parts and lay them out for you, and you decide what it is you or your company wants to take advantage of. And like I said, enterprise zone, don't care when you start, because people usually get freaked out about that. Most of the other things you need to let somebody know. The real estate rehab, you need to let the city assessor's office know. The local redevelopment grant, because it's competitive and we try to keep everything on task and knowing when people did things and documenting that, is 30 days with them pulling a permit. And if you don't need a permit, y'all didn't need a permit for the brick foam off or whatever it was, something. And our city inspector said, they don't need one, then you can just produce that receipt, and it's within 30 days of doing that, then we're good to go.
We had one of those before and after.
Yeah. Well, it always helps us, because like I said, we're showing people all kinds of what they do to a building. I mean, I've had retaining walls fail before for the local redevelopment grant. Well, that's kind of a big deal, that somebody needs to get replaced, and it can make your neighbors, other businesses' life not too happy too when you do that. So, any other questions? Anything? Take food home to your loved ones, if you care to.
You were reading my mind, weren't you?
Yes. Anna sent me a text that said, bring baggies. I said, I will.
One for the staff tomorrow.
I will. Yeah, but we only have so big of a staff, and our refrigerator is about as big as that my briefcase is over
Share with the
there.
rest of the floor.
Yeah.
That's true.
Well, and I do that very strategically, Andy. It's like, wait a minute, are you approving my budget? Come on down to my office and have some cheese. Thank y'all so much for coming out tonight.
Thank you.